Once your prospects hear about you, they search for you online. They're going to Google and they're trying to find you. And if you're not showing up in Google, you're losing those prospects and deals to the competition. You just are. But the good news is there are just a few key steps to ensure your company and your name shows up where it matters most in Google search results. So today, Mallory and I are going to walk you through those steps and we're going to get into it. But anyways, welcome back to the Evergreen Marketing live show by Carrot.com. This is where every week we teach you a new marketing tactic to help you master online marketing. So hopefully we can help you build a business of freedom and impact. If you're watching with us live, pop your questions in the chat. We're going to answer them in just a bit. If you're listening to the audio podcast version after the fact, join us live every week at 11 a.m. Pacific on Thursdays in our Evergreen Marketing Facebook group at community.carrot.com, where we do this interactive coaching call and Q&A. So it's going to be a little bit different today. We're going to spend a little bit more time talking through the verbal portion and just walking you through these steps to getting your company ranked in Google. And then we're going to do a little bit of screen share, Q&A, and show you guys some of the tools that will help you out. But mostly this is going to be conversational, and we're just going to be walking you through the steps of what you need to do. So real quick, before we get into it, Mallory, I want to talk about like why this is important and why it's critical that people don't overlook this. This is the most important search term for any investor or really any business owner, like besides any broad terms. But even more so if you are spending money on TV ads or radio or direct mail, where you're telling people about who you are, maybe even you're giving out your website name in the ad, but we don't remember that stuff. And we're not always somewhere where you can click on a website link or URL. This is where people that are already motivated to work with you, or at least are researching you to see if you're legit and credible, they're trying to find you online. And if they don't find you, they're going to go to a competitor. And a lot of times they don't even realize it, because we do this as consumers, researching for a mattress, and we click on somebody else's PPC ad or some other website, and
Yeah, or another really good example that I always like to use, like who is really good at local brand awareness is personal injury lawyers, right? Like they spend so much money on SEO, on PPC, paid advertising. And I bet any of us within our local areas probably know that one or two local personal injury lawyers who's on all the billboards, who's on all the TV commercials. I know mine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know them by name. And if you get in an accident, they're the person you are probably going to think of first, whether you end up working with them or not. Like they're the first thing that comes to mind, and you go to search them.
It's so funny. Last time I flew into LAX, we get off the plane, we go to the parking thing, and like the first thing I see is this massive billboard right over the Uber parking lot, and it's like the Uber personal injury lawyer. It's like the Uber lawyer. I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy's dialed in. But yeah, this is the most important ranking because people are trying to find you. And I think we miss that because, like, when you think about SEO, people are like, how can I rank for Sell My House Fast or We Buy Houses in Market City, which those are the higher volume ones. But you got to capture the people who are already trying to find you, because they're the most likely to turn into deals, even though they're lower volume. I reached out to Cam on our team yesterday, our data guy, and I had him try and get a sense of like how much of the traffic coming to Carrot sites is people searching for what we call branded terms, which is a version of your company name. So like people searching Carrot.com or Carrot.com reviews, things like that. What we found is from a pool of people, at least a pool of Carrot members, at least 1 in 5 of visitors come into your site from search results. So they Googled something. At least 1 in 5 of those people are coming from searching branded terms. But this goes up dramatically if you're like running offline marketing or you're creating search demand offline. So like that's the average or the low end. We'll talk about it in a second here, but there's a lot of members with like way more demand. I'd say maybe 70, 80% of their traffic coming to their website is people just trying to find their business name. Yeah, go ahead.
And those people who have even more branded search volume are the people who are capturing a ton of leads and doing a lot of deals, right, Brady?
Yeah, exactly. A good example of this, a good quick story is Bo Hollis. I share his website on here all the time. He's been on the podcast many times. Bo Hollis is simplysold.com out of Louisville, Louisville. And a while back, he started getting leads from Florida. And he's like, where the heck are these Florida leads coming from? Excuse me. Come to find out, there's a Simply Sold in Florida that didn't have their SEO dialed in, didn't have their Google business page up online. And so people were trying to find this guy in Florida and going with Bo, which Bo does, is able to close leads in other states and JV them. And so he's been getting deals from people trying to reach him, people trying to reach the Florida guy, and the prospect, the seller, doesn't even realize it because they think they found the company. So anyways, it's super important, especially if you have a similarly branded name, if it's not unique. But yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But okay, so let's get into the steps. One disclaimer before you do these things, and Mallory, feel free to chime in here. Besides going through the site checklist on Carrot.com and like dialing in your website, personalizing it, is there anything else you should have done before you're even worried about trying to rank for your company name?
I mean, start with a good company name to begin with, a very memorable, distinct, unique brand name, right?
What is that to you? Oh, it's a good example.
So here's an example of the opposite of that, right? There's a kind of famous picture in SEO circles of a Thai restaurant that named itself Thai Food Near Me. Now, from SEO perspective, maybe there's a little bit of a purpose to that in their mind, right? If somebody searches Thai food near me, well, that Thai restaurant technically is that's the name of the restaurant, but they're not going to stand out. They're just going to be, kind of lumped in with every other Thai restaurant, versus there's this amazing Thai restaurant that I went to the other day called Banana Blossom. That's here in Gretna, Louisiana. And it is amazing. And if somebody searches Banana Blossom, Gretna, Louisiana, they're for sure going to find that Thai food restaurant, right?
Yeah. They're not competing. Yeah. Versus like Oregon Home Buyer or Roseburg Home Buyer. Yeah. Something unique. Okay. So, all right, let's get into it. So we're going to go through about 4 or 5 steps here. The 4 are most critical, and sometimes you might need to go the 5th step and go the extra mile if you're competing for a more competitive search term or you have a similarly named business that doesn't stand out. But anyways, the first one has nothing to do with organic rankings, organic Google rankings, but is PPC. So I talked about this with Brennan, our PPC guy on the team yesterday, because Trevor will often recommend like, hey, put couple $100 a month behind PPC for your company name. And I want to run that by Brennan and be like, is this something you're doing? He's like, yeah, it's usually a safe bet, especially if you're driving offline traffic. So I talked to Brennan, our PPC guy. He said a safe bet would be to put maybe like $5 a day behind PPC, which would be like $150 a month. And you might not even spend that whole budget. But basically, you can launch a PPC campaign targeting, like if it's me, I'm going to go Brady Buys Houses. I'm going to put a PPC ad for that. Or if I already have a PPC campaign for motivated sellers, just for any motivated sellers in my area, you can just add your company name to your existing PPC campaign to target some of that traffic. But that's going to help because obviously when you go Google something, you're going to have a lot of times just, anywhere from 1 to 5 different sponsored results up top. And some people, without even realizing it, prospects are just going to click whatever pops up or click one that they think is you. So yeah, Google PPC just as a line of defense before you, especially if you don't have that organic ranking yet. You can have PPC ads before you get your number 1 ranking. So that's up to you if you want to spend the money on it, how important that is to you and who else is showing up. But yeah, that's an easy one to do. And if you want someone to run our PPC, go to the Carrot Marketplace. We got some great PPC vendors in there that can help you out because it's not easy. Second thing, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of on-page SEO. Okay, so you mentioned, Mallory, start with a memorable and unique brand name. That makes everything else easier. But I think another thing to realize is people should go after their business name and their first and last name. And because if they're talking to people, if they're networking, anything like that, people are going to be Googling their name because they're not going to remember the business name all the time. And so I think especially when you're dialing in your about page, a good example of this, Carrot member Brady Grown out of Ohio. I was on his website yesterday, Brady Buys Houses. He's ranking number 1 for Brady Buys Houses. He's doing the SEO really well. But his last name isn't anywhere on the website or is only in a couple spots. So his about page was all just about Brady. And I'm thinking, man, he just puts his last name in here. It'd be really easy for him to rank for his name. But his website is not ranking for that right now.
Yeah, and that's so important, especially if you're out there doing networking events, meeting people in your community face to face, right? You hand them a business card. Maybe they look you up by your actual human name instead of your company name. You want to be found for either one.
Yep, yep. We got a question in the chat. Mobile home buyer Jim. Yeah, put your website in here too. He said not sure if we are standing out so far. When we get into the live Q&A portion, we'll Google it and we'll maybe give you some tips. See if you're not ranking, we'll maybe give you some recommendations. But yeah, so go after your business name and your first and last name. On-page SEO, so title tags and meta descriptions. The cool thing is when you launch a Carrot site, a lot of this is done for you because you plug in your business name into Carrot. It's going to populate it in the right heading tags, H1 tags onto your various pages. So that's already taken care of for you. And then I can't remember if the meta descriptions are taken care of, but anything else I'm missing within title tags and meta descriptions, like really important places in your website, you need to put your business name.
So yeah, your title tags, meta descriptions are two main parts of your on-page SEO, the content that you can control on your pages. I would also say headings, right? Headings are a huge part of on-page SEO, whether we're including some of those keyword phrases that people are searching, and also where relevant, our brand name or our name, especially on the About Us or our company page, including that in headings. I'd also say there's a great opportunity to use testimonials and reviews, because often people are using your name or your company name when they're speaking positively of you, right? So if they've left you a good review on Google My Business and you're quoting some of that via a testimonial block on your Carrot site, that's often an opportunity to include either some of those unbranded keyword phrases like sell my house fast for cash, or potentially your company name too.
Yeah, and that's something that Google is definitely looking for. They're saying, are there other places this business name is being mentioned online just besides your own copy on your website? Yeah,
yeah,
so
that was
Google. Yeah, go ahead.
That was going to say that was one of the things that there was a lot of evidence in the Google leak, the Google algorithm leak that happened in May, was that there may be just as much importance on brand name mentions as actual links, right? So the more that people are talking about you online, or the more that you're being mentioned in other parts of the internet, all of that stuff helps to, build that brand awareness and drive that search.
Yeah, it's huge. So get reviews, get reviews consistently in your Google business profile, and then you can put those on your website. We have testimonial blocks to make that really easy, but put those reviews on your website, especially the ones if you can get people to mention, I sold my house to Brady Buys Houses, love the whole process, yada yada yada. That's just gold for SEO and credibility. Another thing, I'll talk real briefly on keyword density. It's just making sure that you mention your company name and your first and last name enough in the website copy without overdoing it. So keyword density is just like percentage of how often that keyword is in your content. You want about 1 to 2% keyword density, and you don't want to keyword stuff. You don't want to just plaster it everywhere. Make sure it's natural, make sure it's readable, but it has to be in your website copy, Here at Brady Buys Houses, we firmly believe in a fair buying and selling process, yada, yada, something like that. Don't just put it in there randomly, but it's got to be in the website copy. So really those are the most important things for on-page SEO. And like I said, Carrot does a lot of these for you when you launch your website. So you don't have to worry about a lot of the on-page SEO for your company name. Next thing, so that's number 2. Number 3 is citations. Citations are basically a type of backlink, and this is what's telling Google. It signals online that are telling Google you exist in other places, and it's pointing back to your website. It's probably a terrible description, but
yeah, well,
analogy, Mallory.
It's kind of like, so Google My Business is one type of citation, right? Maybe even the most important one, if we had to pick just one. But if you think about the Yellow Pages, right? We don't use phone books really anymore, but citations are the virtual version of the Yellow Pages. And in fact, I think yellowpages.com, there's a bunch of different virtual versions of that now. Those are some of the citations. Yelp is one. There's lots of different ones.
Yeah, Yelp for sure, Google My Business. But yeah, make sure you build out your citations. One thing that's really critical here is name, address, phone number. You call it NAP in SEO. So when you're adding your business or registering your business with these directories and you're building out your citations, you need to make sure that your name, address, phone number is consistent. So I don't want to have, Carrot.com LLC on my Facebook profile, and then I go do my Google business profile and it's, Carrot Carrot websites or just Carrot. You want to make sure it's like carrot.com or Carrot everywhere you go. So it's Brady Buys houses everywhere, not a variation of that. And then one phone number for your business for all these listings. And then the same address. You don't want to have like your home address in some spots and physical location in other spots. It's going to confuse Google, and it's going to be thinking that there's multiple businesses going on. So you need to tell Google, hey, this is one business. Here's my contact info. Keep that consistent. Another thing, building out citations takes a ton of time. This isn't a sales pitch. This is just to save you guys time. We have a service in our marketplace. We'll build out 40 citations for you for $350. So you can do the math on how many hours that would take you, what your hourly wage is. It's probably worth it to have us build out your citations because we do them specific to real estate investing. Anything else on citations, Mallory?
The only other thing I would add is consider social media profiles, right? So even if you're not going to be active on certain social media platforms, if possible, I think it's always a good idea to lock down those usernames so that everything is consistent when you're starting a new business, right? So that if in the future you decide you do want to become active on a certain social media platform, you already have it, and you can at least update the profile information to add a link back to your website where that is an option on those social media platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. It even matters, one thing, I can't remember if this popped up in the Google leak, but Google's also looking at mentions in YouTube descriptions, but then we also learned in transcripts too. So even if it's not an actual link, but you have brand name mentions in a video transcript, Google's recognizing that.
Yeah, like in the video itself, because they can understand that information that we're saying in the videos more and more because they're automatically transcribing everything now.
Yeah. So if you're an investor and you're doing videos, Brad Woodall, who we just recorded a podcast with, Brad, the probate guy, make sure maybe in your outro, you're saying, if you want to learn more, go find me at whateverwebsite.com. Those things matter. Okay, cool. So we got citations. And then that is, let's see. So those 3 steps are the most critical for a lot of people. These 3 steps will get you there. Doing a little bit of PPC as a line of defense, optimize your on-page SEO, and then do your citations. A lot of times you won't see like any ranking in Google until you get some of those citations built out. You'll start to go up the ranks. But sometimes you just aren't on the first page of Google and maybe not even the #1 ranking. Maybe if you're competing with a similarly named business like Bo with Simply Sold, or there's, you've named your business like Oregon Home Buyer, and there's other variations of that. It's going to take a little bit more work to get ranked. So this is where off-page SEO comes in. And Mallory, you kind of put this in terms of creating demand.
Yeah. So I would say that the citations that we talked about fall under the umbrella of off-page SEO, right? So off-page SEO is basically everything that you're doing that's not directly on your website itself, that still helps boost visibility for your brand, that still helps to send traffic and links back to your website, right? So we often think about getting backlinks. That's part of off-page SEO. The citations are part, but there's also things like press and publicity, digital PR, getting on podcasts, getting featured on somebody else's YouTube channel, doing community involvement and getting mentions in the local news media, right? There are so many things that can potentially fall under this off-page SEO, and they are all super helpful, not only for SEO, but for general brand awareness and boosting the credibility of your business too.
Yeah. Joe Sway, one of our Carrot members out of Boston, has been really good at this. His thing is just podcasts. He's got a good personality and good story. He's well-spoken. And so he just started doing a bunch of local podcasts in his area and a couple of bigger ones, but mostly just small podcasts. And he mentions his website in the podcast. It ends up in the transcript, often ends up in the description of the show notes. He ends up in podcast directories, on people's blogs and local websites, just from like sitting down and having a sub 1 hour conversation with someone. And then that company takes care of the work. It's pretty awesome. And it's like probably maybe one of the cheapest way to get good backlinks. So yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, driving demand for your website offline, get high quality backlinks. You can do guest blogging, maybe backlink swaps with other people in your area, like maybe your attorney, things like that.
Yeah, there's also pitching via things like HARO, Help a Reporter Out, or Source of Sources, right? So looking where you can add value to journalists or other bloggers that are looking to write articles about topics that you're an expert on, and then pitching your expertise and getting mentions that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, so that's all the off-page SEO driving demand. Step 5, and this is just a little bit of a tip, not really a step, but just regularly monitor and update your content. Make sure to keep your website fresh. Post a new blog post every once in a while. Use our automated content library or a niche authority builder, and put up some blog posts on a topic that you're an expert in, your authority in. Put blog posts up. Make sure you have frequently asked questions section on your website. Maybe do a video every once in a while on some of the questions you get from prospects and sellers. If people are Googling, like for some of the bigger brands, like Laurel Buys Houses, I know you're watching this, Aaron, you guys have like questions that people Google, like, is Laurel Buys Houses legit? Is Laurel Buys Houses a scam? That happens with a lot of like larger investors. So maybe do a video on that, and get some testimonials and put it in there. Do a blog post on that. That's going to help you pop up for some of the search terms people are typing in. But yeah, keep your content fresh, add new content regularly, and just keep an eye on your progress. But really, that's about it. It's not, the cool thing is it's not super complicated, and you can actually get ranked pretty fast. I mean, I'd say the fastest usually 60, maybe 90 days, but typically around like up to 6 months. I did this with a side project with a business on the side, and without doing hardly any work besides adding a handful of citations. I think it was on page 1 of Google within about like 4 months or so. It went from like page 4 or 5 to page 1, but then I wasn't ranking number 1. And then after I went on a couple podcasts and got a couple of backlinks, I shot up to the number 1 ranking. I was like, okay, cool. I just needed a handful of high quality backlinks, and that moved the needle for me. So it's usually not that hard to get your company name right. But yeah. Anything else you want to add, Mallory, before we jump into the Q&A? Do a little screen sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things is just about adding value, right? Showing up, being helpful, being empathetic for the people that you ultimately want to do business with, right?
Yeah.
That's what drives demand for your company brand. And that's what builds that long-term trust and business success.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Well, sweet. Thanks. Anybody listening to the podcast, thanks for listening. We're going to jump into the live Q&A here and do a little bit of screen sharing, show you what's up. If you are just listening to the podcast, again, join us every week, 11 a.m. Pacific at community.carrot.com. That's our Facebook group, but join us live and we'd be happy to answer questions and nerd out with you. But that's a wrap for the podcast.